There is a huge deficit in housing in Africa, and Kenya, to be specific, 200,000 is the deficit. We can only supply 50,000. Why? These are the conversations we're going to be engaging Shelter Afrique Managing Director and CEO Andrew Chimphondah. But right now we start with his profile.
Andrew Chimphondah is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Shelter Afrique. Chimphondah, a Zimbabwean national, is a chartered accountant and member of both the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. He holds a Master of Business in Administration, majoring in International Finance from Durham University Business School in the United Kingdom. He is currently completing his PhD thesis on innovative housing finance solutions for the affordable housing market with the Da Vinci Institute in South Africa. Chimphondah has more than 20 years experience in finance, business executive leadership, experience in real estate, finance, retail and wholesale banking. He joins Shelter Afrique from Housing Investment Partners Limited, where he served as the Group Chief Executive. He has also worked as the Managing Executive for National Housing Finance Corporation, which is the largest development financial institution in Southern Africa. He has also served as a director and managing executive levels, focusing on home loans at ABSA and the Standard Chartered Bank in South Africa.
Well, thank you, sir. Welcome to the Trading Bell.
It's a pleasure to have me, Noah.
Thank you. So let's start. 2018, because history is important.
Yeah.
2018, you marked a huge loss,
Correct.
923 million. Then 2019, you scaled that down to 59 million shillings. That is quite a leap and quite an improvement.
Yes.
Tell us, how did that come about?
As a board, we put together a 5-year strategy, which was from 2018 to 2023. And I think critical to that strategy was that Shelter Afrique must focus on becoming financially sustainable, developing impact and relevance to the member states, because we are owned by 44 countries. And then, of course, lastly, as an organization, to be sustainable, improve our governance. Now, when we talk of the numbers, that is a 94% improvement in terms of reduction in loss by at least about almost 900 million shillings. And that really came about mostly, firstly, I would say that we focused on making sure that most of our creditors or our lenders, we paid them a significant amount. So we reduced our borrowings by about 33%, and then that led to a reduction in just the interest expense alone of about 600 million of that amount. Then we also focused all our efforts in terms of aggressively collecting on our non-performing loan book, and of course the performing loan book as well. As a result, we actually collected a significant amount, at least about 1.6 billion Kenyan shillings, and the impact on our profitability of just that itself was another 500 million in terms of Kenyan shilling terms. And then from a cost perspective, we introduced a cost rationalization drive, which saw us improve our operating expenses by 7% when we compare with 2018.
Definitely. And you've mentioned the strategy, which is running up to 2023.
Yes.
For now, 2020 was poised to be that year,
yes,
where things were going to turn around,
yes,
for even a more positive result.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've seen how 2020 has come about. So tell me, how is Shelter Afrique, weaving with this COVID-19 and this environment? How are you adjusting as a company?
With COVID, because that's a pandemic, so the first thing was to ensure that the staff remain alive, the staff remain safe. So what we decided to do as an organization is to ensure that all the staff are working from home. We improved our information technology to ensure that we can access Shelter Afrique from anywhere. The project was called Chef Anywhere. So all meetings are virtual. All staff do their work, and actually we've seen that they become even more productive that way. And then another thing also just to note with COVID is that we've taken a strategic decision that since COVID is something which has impacted the economies of most of the African countries, we've said we as Shelter Afrique are going to use COVID as an opportunity to advocate house construction, an opportunity to advocate investing in infrastructure. Why? Because housing is the one industry whereby you can actually bolster and kickstart economies.
And that is a noble pursuit. Issue of affordable housing as the Kenyan government, I know that is a priority as the continent of Africa. Looking at statistics across countries, Ghana 1.7 million deficit in housing, Kenya 2 million deficit in housing. And now the question arises when the government comes up with, affordable housing agenda. It sounds like a very common term. Maybe help us understand, because affordable housing, what goes into that? If you may just expound for us slightly.
You see, affordable housing is the most commonly used term because, for instance, if an individual can afford a house of 20 million shillings, it means that house is affordable to him. And then if, let's say, the normal Mwananchi can only afford a house of 2 million or 3 million shillings, that's affordable to him. So I think we at Shelter Afrique are going to be defining officially this year what is really affordable. Now, what I think we should be focusing on is that in Africa, the biggest problem in the housing market across, you talked about the different countries, when you look at the 56 million shortage, you start to dissect and say, how is that split in the continent? 22 million is now Nigeria. I think there's a correlation with also the population. You go down, 3 million Tanzania, 3 million also in DRC, in Congo. Then you've explained also the Kenya situation. Why is that so? It's because the single biggest challenge in Africa is affordability. So now we as Shelter Afrique, understanding that there's a problem with affordability of houses, when we look across the different countries in the continent, people are building, but without understanding what the majority of the population can afford. So where we then have a problem is now when we talk of affordability. So in short, for us, we're looking at low cost, high quality housing. And to achieve that, you have to be able to deliver it at scale. That is why we as Shelter Afrique, we sort of try to advocate for public-private partnerships, where to come up with that low cost, high quality house, anything between 50 to 100 square meters or so, that requires government to come in and say, look, I will put in land, or I will subsidize infrastructure, or I will even pay for infrastructure. And then you then have the private developers and the banking system now taking up now the top structure.
And that is clear. 3 million and below, that is relatively affordable in our economy right now.
Sure.
You've touched on public-private partnerships.
Yes.
Very important. And you as a company also, you are in a position to finance.
Yes.
Means if you're empowered more, then you will finance more.
Yes.
There's been talks of increasing your capital base as a company.
Yes, no.
Tell us about that.
Okay, well, 56 million housing units, you need at an average of, let's say, $2,000 or let's say $25,000. You need at least $3 trillion worth of funding. Our balance sheet, cannot take that. Now, we have an authorized share capital of $1 billion, which I would say 108 billion Kenyan shillings. Now, in that, we have issued share capital of 300 million US, okay, which would, of course, in Kenya shillings would be about 30 billion. So 30 billion Kenyan shillings. But what we are saying is that for us to be able to support the public-private partnerships with funding, we need to be capitalized. So the way it works is that if you look at our capital structure, we are owned by 44 member states. Those member states, we've issued 300 million, let's say, US dollars in terms of share capital. What we have collected is less than half of that. So we are on a capital drive to say to our member states, please can you come in and pay in your capital? Why? Because we then use that capital to be able to now, borrow by leveraging on that capital base to borrow long-term debt, so that we come up with a competitive financing package for developers and tier 1, tier 2 banks in Africa. And that's essentially how it works. So if we come right down to Kenya, for instance, we are expecting to collect 26 million US dollars from Kenya. The CS for transport, infrastructure and housing and urban development, CS Macharia, has already committed that the 26 million will be paid. We're fortunate to have the CS for National Treasury, Honorable Yatani, who actually committed to say, as Kenya, Kenya will pay the 26 million, US dollars. And what does that mean? It means then that that same money will go towards supporting the Big Four agenda. But we've also introduced another class of shares, which is Class C, yes, where we are approaching multilaterals internationally to come in and say, at a ticket size of $50 million, come in and invest in Shelter Afrique, and you can have a window to 44 countries, in Africa. If you are interested in housing, if you are interested in developing, in achieving development impact, once we get Class C, of course, that will lead to a dilution where you may end up with maybe 60, 2020, yes, etc. But that is basically what we're looking at in terms of trying to change our structure. So yes, I think the ideal capital structure will probably end up being maybe 40% Class A, 30% Class B, and 30% Class C.
Definitely. And you're saying you are en route towards the capital markets.
Yes.
That journey, what does it take to get there?
Okay, so what it takes to get there, is firstly, you have to show that, one, you're a well-governed company. And you'll find that with Shelter Afrique, we also received the ISO 9000 2015 Quality Management System Award to confirm independently that we are well-governed. We have a competent board. We also have a competent management team, and we've got strong, stringent internal control processes, etc.
This is KTN News.